Pat mentioned this the other day in my log. I was like, man, the first step toward finally doing a Charles Hamilton podcast. I listened to the one that everybody likes, and it was very good.
The closest thing to a consensus Charles project, I would say, is probably that.
Yeah.
But that's the first step out of like Odessa steps to a Charles Hamilton project.
Right. It's literally the long chain of tiny dominoes to big domino meme of inciting incident years later, Charles Hamilton podcast.
Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock tick 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 faster.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of Playboi Carti month. We are honoring Die Lit, as I mentioned in the previous episode, where we covered in abundance, the Cash Carti era, the self-titled. And this episode is a standalone episode. We're just going to talk about Die Lit for its 5-year anniversary on May 11th, which is hopefully when you're hearing this, or at least in thereabouts. And this is an album that is very special to me. I believe it's very special to my co-host Patrick, and also another person that I know thinks of it very highly, and it's the first time that they're on the podcast with both of us in a while. Wyatt, aka Kittenpuke, our special producer. We're going behind the boards, behind the paint. Wyatt, how you doing today?
I'm doing just wondrous. I'm fighting the urge to not die every day and die lit as hard as possible.
I don't really know how to respond to that, so we're gonna go to my other co-host Patrick.
I'm groggy as hell.
Real hot.
I'm here.
Coming in real fucking hot with that one. I would have gone with we haven't been together in such a long time, and I've been waiting for this for a long time. That's the reference I would have gone with. That's true. Yeah, just to feel like this, it took a long time.
Than I did.
Yeah.
You had it much better prepared than I did. But
me with my podcast buddies, just to feel like this, it took a long time. But unfortunately, Wyatt went right for the jugular.
Well, I mean, considering that the other two ones we've done together were ICP and Lil Peep, a certain level of intensity you expect when we get together.
That's true. Although we did lead our little Peep one with a Sonic discussion and a Hamilton discussion. So it really went full circle with our Hamilton discussion in the intro. So
I'm just happy that we're finally here, because it has been like how fucking long since I have been promised this episode for me. Like since
a very long time. Even before you were the official producer of the podcast, to be honest.
True. Yeah. One of the very first people who was promised an episode. I mean, actually, we've been doing a good job of like checking off like the promised episodes. We got the Spit episode, at least one of them. Finally got Gucci Part 2 knocked out. Finally got Wu-Tang knocked out. I don't know. I mean, maybe that Prince episode with Moo Kid is in our future. But Moo Kid, if you're listening, I would like to do it by like next year, by the anniversary of his passing. So, hit us up. We could knock that off.
True. 6 years in the making. We'll get there.
And the Franco, I don't want to participate in the discourse at all, but the Frank Ocean episode, I think, is another one that's been sitting on the back burner for a long time.
It has been. I don't know. Like our original guest, I will not name them, but is kind of dropped out of the running for that, so we'll have to we'll cook. We will cook, and we will find a guest or multiple guests, because the Frank episode, let's be real, that's probably going to be a two-parter. Let's not mince words.
Let's also be real. I don't think we have to worry about him, and nor should he have to worry about doing this, dropping anything fresh for us to talk about.
True. 100%. I agree with you.
It'll just be another 4 years before I get my Metro Zoo episode. That's the last thing I was promised that I still need to get down off the checklist. Noted audiences, I will push this podcast to get that episode someday. I know people want it.
You are more than welcome to do that episode solo. I am not. No, I'm kidding. At some point we will get to that one as well. Listeners, we got a hefty backlog. Let us.
We got things planned.
Yeah. But yes, on to the topic of
show us your suggestions, though. By the way, we always do appreciate them.
Yeah,
100%. Literally, if you message me on RYM or any platform, I will get back to you, because I appreciate it. But anyway,
so there's not going to be an Eminem episode, so don't ask for that.
Well, don't do that.
It's not happening.
That should go without saying, actually.
But it has been asked for, and it has been rejected, so just don't bother. It's not happening. But anyway.
Right, well, whoever asked for that is not allowed to come on the podcast, Frank. But anyway, moving past that, episode that we have been wanting to do for a while, and I'm very glad that we can do it as to honor the 5-year anniversary, which one makes me feel like very old, which is a rare. I'm having a Patrick moment. Yeah,
real.
I'm having a Patrick moment, but no. Dial It. As you know, Wyatt, being the producer, I've been asking the guests who come on what their relationship is to Dial It. So what better way to lead off a discussion than to talk to you and get your, what were your initial thoughts about Dial It? Were you a Carti fan previously? What's your relationship to the album then versus now, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, well, to start with where I was with Carti, I believe I got into Carti pretty much, I think, when most people did that weren't already in the know, which is that, I was catching him when Magnolia dropped and was really popping off, with the self-titled mixtape and everything. That was my first exposure to Carti. And, I was already, by the time Dial It had come out, I was already all in with the mixtape. I thought it was a piece of genius, a piece of musical genius in terms of just perfect, what at the time I thought was almost a weird minimalist maximalist type of rap, where it was these really simplistic beats but that were actually doing quite a lot, and Carti just not saying a lot but then also saying a lot, because his ad libs would be fucking. That was always the thing. I remember the big discussion point, his ad libs taking up the entire mix with just nonstop. He was always going off with the ad libs in the background. It was essentially a wall of sound for his vocals, that type of thing. So I was loving that with Pierre Bourne's production. It was I was all in. So I was really hyped when this suddenly dropped out of nowhere. And that was the funny thing, is that unlike everything else that we know of about Carti, is that this one kind of just dropped and relatively quickly. And so that was I was there for when the debut happened, everything, and I was in fucking awe of it, because I was oh, he just did the mixtape, but even better. It took a second because there were some weird parts. I remember, the discussion around Dial It was that, it, much like anything Carti drops, is that most people really did not like it, or at least had reservations about it when it dropped. And, I have the same thing, although I'm not viscerally hateful. It's I just know there's some quirks that I need to get used to. So it was Rockstar, all that. Love Hurts. With Travis Scott, those types of tracks. I was I think I'm gonna need to figure this one out. But I was already loving it, and within less than a day or two, I was already yeah, this completely this is an upgrade to even the mixtape, or at least another side of it. And it's just there's barely any low point that I could point to on the album. And so I was just like that it was basically the album that made me like a Carti stan, quote unquote, from there on out.
Yeah, no, I mean I've mentioned this on many a podcast past, but in the case of Die Lit, I kind of echoing Wyatt. I mean, I was a big fan of the self-titled. Like I said, initially during the self-titled episode, I mentioned that I liked it, but then over the course of that summer 17, I played it like obsessively. So then I grew to, love it and thought it was fantastic. So I was definitely all in. I remember actually the night Die Lit came out. I don't know why I remember this, but I fell asleep because at that time I was working like round the clock that summer. I remember vividly. I had multiple jobs. So I was really tired, and I fell asleep, and I woke up, and it was in the middle of the night, and Die Lit had dropped, and I was like, oh, I'll listen to a few songs, like I was looking forward to it. And I listened to, obviously, the first couple songs, as you know, I mean, all pretty legendary songs in Carti's, discography. And I was so blown away that I ended up just, like, listening to the whole thing at, like, 3 in the morning, and then, fell back asleep, and then my relationship with it was instantaneous, and then it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And all summer 2018, like I would wake up. I mean, I worked like 7 days a week that summer, so I would wake up, shower, eat breakfast, play Die Lit, go to work, like in the car on the way to work, play Die Lit, come home on the late at night from whatever job I was at that day, play Die Lit. Like no matter, it was just like it was kind of like the ticking clock of that time for me. And so I will always, always, always associate that year with Die Lit, because even though, like, there would be obviously, you're going to go through times you're not going to play the album, I could return to it no matter what and get something new out of the experience each time. So Die Lit was a very special album to me in 2018. It was my album of the year that year when it, when we did that whole podcast, which of course is, lost to time, but that is still the case now. And I know that other people have, come on the show. I mean, Ben mentioned it on the last episode about how, it's so special, but like he's played it so much that, he doesn't always return to it now. Like it has a very special place in his heart. For me, that is also like partly true. It is very, very special and one of my favorite albums, like of all time, cliche, but I think it definitely did change my life and change how I listen to music. But in that same vein, I can still, like, I re-listened to it just cause this morning for this podcast, and it was like having a conversation with an old friend. That's what it was like for me. So yeah, nothing but very, very strong and things to say about this, and overwhelming praise for the album. So yeah, can't speak highly enough about it then and now.
I will say real quick, I'm the same way as you, Caleb. When this came out, I guess I should mention, but it's like, yeah, I ran this thing into the fucking ground. It was on constant repeat. This project, I couldn't ever get enough of this. It was like this, and making comparisons to the mixtape. I don't think I ever told you guys this, but I used to, how I know that I was like how to really fully stamp in how much of an ultra fan I was of Carti, this and the mixtape during that time, was that like I was working on a list on ROM to like break down. I used to have this crackpot theory that like, oh no, Die Lit is actually a concept album, and that there was like a whole story to it. And like I was like deep into like the intricacies of the album and being like, no, you don't get it. It's like an album about him losing a relationship and everything, and it's a sequel to the previous mixtape. And I still actually do think so with that second point. I do think that it operates as a sequel with many references to the old album, to the mixtape. And we can get into that. But I used to be like, I was so deep into this, I was making like crackpot theories about this thing that I kept to myself. I never got around to finishing them out, and I don't believe in them anymore, but I was like obsessed with this thing.
I mean, put a pin in that, because I find that very interesting. It's very, by the way, that is very much one of the most Wyatt things I've ever heard, considering your obsession with lore. That you would impose lore on an album that actually doesn't necessarily have the lore to it. You would just construct lore around it, like your own headcanon the album. But I think that's best. I can see where you would get that, though. I mean, there are definitely lines that you could take as direct callbacks that I can see where you would construct that. Just real quick from my own perspective, I have a different relationship with this album than you guys. I have it at a 10, 5, whatever. Like, I clearly value it just as highly as, well, maybe not just as highly, but I clearly put it at the same tier as both of you. But at the time, I was not working I was working 0 jobs at the time, but so I had a lot of time to listen to music. But on the other hand, I was at the time studying online, but still, like, for my coding certification. So I was working pretty strenuously, albeit in a way that afforded me, in a situation that afforded me a lot of time to listen to music. But when you were talking about the year, I kind of hit on the RYM 2018 charts just as a refresher of what was big that year to see what I was up against. And just, I did kind of refresh what I was listening to that year. Like, number 2 is Kids See Ghosts, number 3 is some rap songs, and number 7 is Daytona. And those were probably the 3 that I listened to the most that year. And obviously some rap songs came out later in the year. So I associate those most with the year. Die Lit came out in May, and I listened to certain songs a lot. Like, I can't say I played it front to back a lot. The opening run, Flatbed Freestyle, and R.I.P. Fredo Notice Me. Those were the ones I gravitated towards. Then over time, it sat with me more, I would say. Like, the only Carti album, really, that I just played front to back to death was Whole Lotta Red, which is, I think, a weird thing to, I don't know, because that's actually, I would say, the most abrasive and intentionally overwhelming of his works, and not counting the bootlegs, just like the intentionally structured by him ones. But I would say this is probably the most accessible, yet I mean, it took me a while to live with it to really have it hit me, I think, in the way that it hit you guys. And yeah, but I would say today, when I re-listened to it fresh for the podcast, I had the same experience that Caleb had, where it was just like an old friend, just like revisiting it, like all of like the verses, the quirks of it, the vocal mix, like the ticks and everything, was just like hearing like beats that you would have when you met up with an old friend and you have the same inside jokes and everything. That's how I felt when I was listening to songs from this, like just picking up on threads, like songs I hadn't listened to in a while. It was just like I could have listened to them yesterday. I knew them that familiarly. So
right.
See, I think that's kind of funny, because when I too had not come back to this album in a while, because again, like you guys said, I ran it into the ground. And then when and then by that point, we were dealing with like the leaks and Whole Lotta Red. And so, attention's turned elsewhere. So it had been, God, it might even have been a couple years since I returned to a majority of these songs after a while. So coming back to them, it was definitely reminiscent. I was like, oh yeah, I know all of these like front to back, but I actually still got some little new things that I hadn't noticed before. Just little things, like little intricacies that made me just be like, ooh, I never realized that little melody hidden in there, and things like that. Like, it's like we'll talk about them, but I think it's on, Choppa Won't Miss, where it's like there's actually like these little, soft ad-lib inflections that Carti does, where he's going like right now or something on like after he does the 100-round drum killing everybody. It's like these little melodies. I was like, oh, I don't remember those, and it was like, oh, there's still way more here that I don't remember or that I didn't pick up on. So I was just being like, wow, this thing is still showing me new little dense melodies this far out that I really hadn't thought of, or just new perspectives on it.
That's a good place to start with it, though, is the vocal melodies, because I think, again, I think I tried to touch on this in all of the episodes we've done in this series, is that Carti is, for all the shit he gets for not being like a bars MC, whatever, like there's something to that, I think, and I don't mean that in a negative way, in that he does not prioritize lyrics, but that doesn't mean that there aren't lyrics of value there, but he's more of a vocalist than an MC, or I guess than a lyricist. He's more of a vocalist than a lyricist. But Go ahead.
I also want to interject with that because not to make a point out of a point to derail your point, but maybe it's perspective because we've come, even in though it's crazy, yeah, that it's been 5 years. Been 5 years, we've come in. This album has been so influential and become so not standardized, but I have no problems under I remember distinctly, even with the mixtape and then even with Dial It, that there was always the jokes like, oh, Carti isn't saying anything, you can't understand, and or you can't understand him. And the thing for me is that now Carti is clear as crystal. I can understand every word he says on both projects, but especially this one. Or even on this one, it's no, he's pretty clearly. I can understand every word he's saying, and he's rapping a lot on this. He's actually not as repetitive as I feel like I remember. And again, I think it's just perspective nowadays, but it's he was actually rapping a lot. And I used to know that a couple songs had concepts, but no, there's plenty of meat on all the bones of most of these songs in terms of lyrical concepts. They're, sometimes just your standard rap things about getting his dick sucked or his diamonds flooding out and whatnot, but it's no, he's still writing lines. There's still plenty here, and it's just kind of funny that it's nowadays, because of again how influential it is and where we've gone in the 5 years, that it's yeah, it's not that weird, it's not as visceral as I remember it being.
If you listen to some stuff that emerged in the last 3 to 4 years, I mean, this shit sounds like you're listening to Nas. It's not. it is kind of like that.
It's more on topic than a lot of Nas songs, actually. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Nas slander. We've arrived.
Yeah, put that on. Nas, notch that on the bingo card. Backhanded Nas comment. Also, so one of the things I remember, you were talking about Wyatt, all of the comments on his voice and not being able to understand him. One of the things I remember hearing all the time, and it might have been post this album, was about the baby voice. And aside from one of the best songs on here, by the way, Notice Me, R.I.P. Fredo, I don't really hear him doing quote unquote baby voice on this too much.
Flatbed Freestyle was always
Flatbed Freestyle, a Flatbed Freestyle. Maybe it's just because, again, I guess we have to keep in mind that we are in a bubble, I suppose, to use sports terminology, whatever, that we are, I guess, inoculated is the right, I don't know, again, bubble terminology to this sort of vocalization. But I mean, Flatbed Freestyle just sounds to me like he's doing thug. And I've always thought that.
There's a lot of thug.
There is in there. I kind of think it's
And if you've heard Slime Season and Barter 6 and stuff, I don't think Flatbed Freestyle should have been too much of a pill for you to swallow. That is baby voice. I think of what he does.
It was for a lot of people at the time.
I remember people. Yeah, see, I remember distinctly Flatbed Freestyle was that song is what birthed the term baby voice. From what I remember, is that it was literally because of that song, and specifically the One More Pint outro little coda section.
But how much
he starts getting really high?
About the same people will probably, faff off Kendrick for, I mean, when did Mona Lisa happen on Carter 5? I would say that, Kendrick on a bunch of songs is doing equally irritating or intentionally abrasive vocal inflections, right? And Kendrick Kendrick has a fucking Pulitzer.
But that's the thing, though. I think it's perspective, because I think, Kendrick even back then was still he would get high pitched. It's like Danny Brown's voice. It's he would get high pitched and it would be abrasive to some people, because I know some people even now still can't stand Danny Brown or Kendrick's voice. No. But I guess that's but they were still relatively anchored by being able to quote unquote understand them. Whereas at the time, everybody would joke that they couldn't understand a goddamn. Everybody, well, not joke. They were serious. No one could understand a goddamn word Carti was saying on quite a few of these songs, and especially on Flatbed Freestyle. There was a period where no one understood what he was saying. But I think, again, it's looking back now, because we live in a world of 60-40, 66-4-5 AR. When we live in that world now, it's yeah, these are nothing to us. It's like he's crystal clear. I understood every single word he said on Flatbed Freestyle, and it's like that type of moments is what hit me as being like, oh yeah, this really isn't. How did we ever have a problem with getting to like following him?
Yeah, why was that the
Where were we?
conversation? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but I
part
think
of
back
it,
then.
Well, I think part of it is region bias. I mean, you mentioned Danny, and we mentioned Danny and Kendrick. I think part of it is that there's a region bias against Carti being Southern, Danny from Detroit, Kendrick being from the West. Then they get more inherent credibility, and part of it is content bias. Danny, I mean, there's half and half with Danny because Danny talks about ignorant shit and also conscious shit, but he, delineates that with what he's using his voice for and what we will tolerate. Kendrick, of course, when he talks about ignorant stuff, is through an ironic lens or he recontextualizes it or whatever, and he does big concept stuff. So we let Kendrick skate on when he does, abrasive things with his voice because it's to a purpose. Whereas Carti's just a mumble rap. There's that word. There's that fucking irritating ass, condescending ass word. That's the other thing aside from baby voice that people said about this album.
That mumbling shit.
Mumbling on this album.
That mumbling shit. Bought a crib for my mama off that mumbling shit. Immediately killed
probably one of the more iconic lines in his whole career.
To me, it's the most iconic. Possibly, it probably is the most iconic because for me, the minute that he said those two lines is like the moment the entire discussion on mumble rap died. It died right there at that moment with those two lines because that's all that ever needed to be said.
See, I think mumble rap died when Death to Mumble Rap came out because
I think that was the final nail in the coffin. I think that was definitely the nail in the coffin, but it was like the RIP with those two lines. I think was like the beginning of the death knell. The gong was starting to be rang. The bell was starting to be rang.
Well done.
And then the death toll was beginning, and then death to mumble rap actually was the death of mumble rap, but the discussion point, not the actual quote unquote artists themselves.
They did it to themselves, as Jay-Z said on Thank You. They didn't mean to, but they actually they killed it in a way they didn't. They did the opposite.
But it's just so simple. It's just so fucking factual and just like right up there with being like, hey, people like this, so just what the fuck are in it, and it makes I'm making money and people love it. So what the fuck are you complaining about? And that's all that needs to be said.
It's ultimately just, and I talk about this in other episodes too. It's the I don't understand. It's not music because I don't understand it argument. And it's just more shitty because it's coming from people within the genre. Before, it was something you could dismiss because it was coming from fucking boomer rock fans who just hated it because it was disco or because they didn't have instruments. They didn't play guitars. And Carti would come at them later with other stuff. But still, although he's even in this album, obviously the cover too. That's like playing with rock tropes. And he would continue to do that. But going after the mumble rap thing is definitely, it's like cannibalism. But it's also jealousy too. When you have someone like Eminem coming at you, Eminem, who's so mad about it, he literally makes a Red Bad and Nude album, not necessarily about Carti. It's actually about Lil Pump. Somebody way worse. But I mean,
and also someone that was obviously like a fad. Like Eminem has I was gonna infer that Eminem has to have known that like fads in hip hop are a thing, but maybe he was, I don't know, oblivious to that.
Well, I mean, it's like that was about a lot of things. It was mainly because he wanted reasons why Revival tanked that weren't just Revival was a career low that he should be embarrassed by and not talk about so much.
Right.
But instead we had to have, it was clearly because no Seymour, it's the children who were wrong.
Well, it's also that thing where I think, I remember there was, I think it was on the Call Culture podcast, and I keep referencing them, but they had a thing where they pointed out that it's like Eminem doesn't really attack people who would actually make diss songs towards him. They're right. Eminem doesn't do that, so I think he also gets easy material because which one are any of these quote unquote like mumble rapper dudes? They're not really. I mean, they make diss tracks, but it's not like they're built for like coming at Eminem. They're not gonna do
what's
it.
funny about Kamikaze though is he took a swipe at Tyler and Earl, but it was so lame that we were just like, all right, old man, whatever you said.
Fucking saying
off to the rest home with you.
Saying the F slur and then purposely censoring yourself is one of the most bitch things you can do in modern rap. One of the most bitch things you can do. It would have been less bitch if he had just like not censored it. Frankly, it would have been less. It would have made him look like less of a douche. But the fact that he did makes him like, you're a pussy, bro.
And then he calls Earl the hooded sweater or whatever, which is roughly Will Smith levels of being harsh to somebody.
Yeah, it's like you know who this is. Like, just shut up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, and then the only person he took a shot, and then he was able to. I think we talked about this before. Machine Gun Kelly had the better diss song. Like, I mean, I don't really want to litigate this too much, but the only time
this 5 years old, this 5-year-old beef,
the 5-year-old diss song between two people we don't like, like just battle. So, but yeah, I don't really even mean to like isolate him because he was far from the only old mad rapper about this stuff. He was just the most famous one to make an album blaming quote unquote mumble rap for, death of hip hop. The only genre that's constantly complaining about dying.
Right.
Consistently complaining. Well, I don't know. Actually, that's the thing that always gets me is everybody's always like, oh, this is only unique to this genre. What a unique thing. And it's like usually it's stuff that isn't very unique. Like everybody thinks their thing is dying. EDM people think that all their music isn't moving anywhere. Rock it keeps trying to say that it's a death knell because it's not in pop music anymore. Pop music thinks it's dying because it's using the same structures, even though that's pop music for like the last, like since the 50s. Everybody always thinks everything is dying. It's just drama.
I mean, you're just reading RYM. You're just reading RYM.
It's music. It's music discourse. What's that tweet Earl had? You people talk about music or whatever, like that.
Well, he
like
said that
type of energy.
Even an F, it's a C-. Like you don't even deserve an F because an F implies you tried too hard. C-. You're just the C-.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, back to worth discussing, and unlike music discourse, Dial-It.
Mm-hmm.
So the first song on here I would put up against any of your, I'll say something nice about Nas, best album openers of all time, like your New York State of Mind, your Iron Galaxy, your I put this up against any great album opener of all time you want to name.
In 20 years, when the old heads like me are going to be sitting around talking about back in my day, this is it right here. This is long time. I think is the start to being like, okay, if you want to call your this a generational defining album, which I think it is and is going and has already proven to be. I think that this is the song from it. It really is. To the point where it's like a cliche, because that's what all time classics become. They become cliches. The song is going to be a cliche, but that's fine.
I would argue for the second half, at least the second half of the 2010s, maybe even the whole 2010s, the three defining opening songs would probably be "Long Time," Nikes, and "Feel the Love." Just for kicking off a fucking album. Just that from the beginning notes. I would say that, and this is not a shot at Kids See Ghosts, Feel the Love is Wyatt, do you know the meme where it's the two dragons and the third dragon is derpy? Yes. Feel the Love is the derp dragon. In those. Well, okay. I mean, or it's what's the meme of all the soldiers lining up at the wall, and there's one guy with a clown costume amongst all the soldiers. That's kind of Feel the Love.
I mean, I'm partial to disagree because Kids See Ghosts is also one of my favorite albums.
I'm not hating on. I think it's a great record. I'm not hating on Kids See Ghosts. I just think that song gets absolutely worked by the other two all-time classics that you mentioned. It is, but I'm saying as an intro though, everybody knows that from the way it comes in with Cudi. With the rat-a-tat ad-libs,
It just sets up such an atmosphere. It just sets up such an atmosphere, as does Long Time. It's just crazy to think, though, that it's like in the context of the time frame and everything. It's like it's him talking about like it's him setting up that Die Lit is like supposed to be like a victory lap album after the success of the mixtape, which is just crazy to think because, you know, in terms of popularity, I guess I would say that Die Lit is arguably the most popular between this and the mixtape. So it's like, it's kind of funny that your victory lap album actually ended up being like your best album, even though I like all, you know, we'll get into debates about which album of his is the best, but it's like theoretically for mainstream audiences, this is his quote unquote, you know, pinnacle as it stands right now. So it's like, it's kind of funny to think of it as a victory lap album, but it is.
Mm-hmm. No, it is, and I think you're right on that note, Wyatt. But yeah, I'm not hating necessarily on Feel the Love, but I'm not going to co-sign that exact thing. But I think with Long Time, the thing that makes it iconic is like just the way it starts, like the way it comes on. Like, I mean, and every line is like inherently super quotable. I mean, like, once again, we're trying to limit the rapping on this podcast, but like even just the way he comes on singing, like, you know, no cap and gown, I ain't go to class, like I'd rather die before I come in last. Like, come on.
Wake up and smell the motherfucking
yeah,
coffee.
and literally
I'm about to put this boy in a coffin.
As someone who would wake up and like, you know, have Long Time and this album playing constantly shortly after it came out, wake up and smell the motherfucking coffee was always like a little, you know, ironic twist to that for me. So yeah, I mean, and just like the ad libs, the fact that it feels like he's doing like a almost like a singer songwriter performance, you know. But
we get the
every line is like,
we get my favorite little thing he does between this and the last mixtape, which is like him talking to people in the background, where he's like, "No, just go ahead and do it. Let me just do this part right here, and we'll go ahead and get going."
I love the. Have you ever been to Atlanta? Like little breakdown. Yeah. There's like I said, this album. I mean, I could have done this podcast after not listening to this album for 3-4 years, and it still would have had the same. Like, I still would have the same things to say about Long Time as I do now, because it's more than just like remembering why you liked an album. This song and almost every track on here is like just so firmly like embedded in the deep recesses of my brain that like I could recall so much about Long Time. So there's so much to say about it, and yet I feel like I almost have nothing but like platitudes like that just don't really mean anything, because Long Time is such like an inherently special song to me, and I think a lot of people.
It says a lot about the way this album is constructed, the craftsmanship, the like high tier quality of his vocals, that I could have not listened to this album ever again. I could have not listened to it fresh for this podcast, to your point, Caleb. And the first 4 songs on here, and R.I.P. Fredo, I will still get them stuck, parts of them stuck, not even just the quote unquote hooks, although, because I think every part of those songs are hooks for the rest of my life. Like, I'll just go around work and just be like, you know, doing my tasks or whatever, and just be like, I ain't had shit in a long time, just to feel like this, it took a long like, it'll just pop in my head out of nowhere.
And Long Time,
and it'll pop in my head. So yeah,
Long Time is a song, and I think I referenced this maybe years ago, but Long Time is a song that no matter what mood or state of mind or you're in, it will fit that exact space in your life. So it could be motivational, it could be, you know, you're down, like you're you know, sad about something, you could be happy about something, you could be kind of, like I said previously, like motivational, striving for something, you know, anything that you need it to be, it is. Because just that's the genius of the hook and the songwriting. It's like, you know, okay, just to feel like this, it took a long time, but at the same time, there's a lot of, you know, there's like an air of there's a tinge of melancholy to it as well. So, yeah.
One thing I didn't one thing that I noticed fresh, but like completely fresh to me, and I should have known this because this man's, or I guess name has come up. I don't mean to misgender them. Art Dealer was the producer for this. I did not know this was not a Pierre beat. I assumed like most things on here that weren't the canon track, this was Pierre.
No, yeah, I remember that actually being a pretty big thing that got pointed out when this album came out, was that there was a couple like everybody was assuming that this track specifically was a Pierre beat, and it's like, no, it's Art Dealer. And everyone, I remember, I think Art Dealer wasn't very known at the time because I was like, who the fuck is that?
Well, it's a
they're RYM right now, and 12 credits, including we're still doing the posthumous extentation stuff, huh? We're still doing that because they apparently have a X album coming out this year called Lost ? Which cool. But yeah, mostly Young Lean, Carti, a Young KO, and whoever Ocasian. I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure. Okasian. I'm sure Caleb knows who it is, and I don't. You guys are probably way more tapped in than I am. I don't know who that is. But yeah, 12 credits on RYM for
well, they're Art Dealer is, as far as I'm aware of, they're from South Korea, and they're like a producer, but they also do like fashion stuff. But Art Dealer's been like Art Dealer had collab. I think that this era was the first time, but like when Art Dealer showed up on Whole Lotta Red, it's not a surprise that he did the Overbeat, because Over, as it was lovingly referred to before the album came out, was referred to as Long Time Too. We know how I feel about Over and how it evokes that for me. He also did a couple other tracks on there, like Not Playing, Sky, etc. So
Stardust, shit. I also reminds me I did not give 4 stars to Stardust by Young Lean, which I will do right now.
Great record, underrated. The rating on that, we need to have a conversation about.
We do under a 3. Okay, yeah. RYM needs to,
which is pretty rare for Young Lean, because Young Lean has gone through the RYM metamorphosis of like all their stuff has gone up over time. So for that to be like, for Young Lean to have that's tough.
From what I'm to understand about that project, that's kind of like his what's the blade?
The Good Luck project. The Good Luck project. It's
like,
better than Good Luck though. That Stardust has some great songs on it.
Forgotten the Stardust.
It is the same. It is the same sort of, I would say, sonic palette as Good Luck, but I enjoyed it more for sure.
Yeah, it's a pretty like easygoing, low stakes project, but I like it a lot.
I also really love the cover art, by the way. It's very, and you'll know it's the Trail of Dead style cover art.
I was just saying it's very like the turn of the century. Yeah,
but the production thing, I don't want to get. I mean, just talk about long time for fucking ever. So, but I did not know that R.I.P. Was based on a Zap sample, which I can tell from the track credits here, because obviously the estate of Roger Troutman got paid off this. So, yeah, another. We talked about this on we will talk about this, I suppose, nonlinear podcast, the WLR Leaks, WLR and Beyond episode, another Pierre pull. But yeah, I did not know this was a Zap sample.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's a sick beat. Like, right, oh my god,
so
it's a little, when I first heard it, I was like, man, this doesn't knock as much as I want it to, but then it has a specific knock to it that I love. It's a headphone knock, this one. You put the good cans on, and it sounds great.
Yeah, it has a real cold feel to it that a lot of Pierre beats don't. It just has like a real cold. And when you actually listen to it on the Slate, like we'll talk about this later, because I do want to come to this, at least touch on it briefly. The Slater slowed and reverb version, I think, kind of lets that really thump a lot harder, I guess, because there's coldness to the drum hit on it that is not in a lot. Because I think a lot of Pierre beats have a warm sound to them. I think that's why this is like feels to me like a summer. Like, I mean, I think that's why May was the perfect time to drop this, and I think why a lot of people think of it like more. Although I think, again, like you were saying, Caleb, it works in the album itself, Long Time, and the album itself work in all sorts of circumstances. But I think that a lot of people think of it both as a morning album, a summer album, because I think Pierre generally works in like sunny, sort of warmer tones. But I think R.I.P. has like a cold feel to it. And I think it's partially because there's like a cold thump to the drum on this one. So it just hits really hard in a way a lot of Pierre beats don't. Which is
It's
what you
kind
get
of
out of the Zap sample, because Zap being like like sunny, funkier band, he gets something out of that you wouldn't expect given the sample source.
is that background vocal where it's like love you,
Yeah.
love you.
That's got to be it. That's got to be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume so. It's such a fucking cool dichotomy how he's just got that running. Like it kind of doesn't. It's hilarious because it doesn't really match up with the beat, but it's like it's adding so much texture and like off key, like on key melody to like an off, like such an abrasive like bass and like his synth work on top of that with the ding ding. It's like they're not supposed to fit together, it seems like, but then they do work so well by like that third point, by like the third section of the song where they're both playing at the same time. It's so crazy how he makes that work together to me.
Well, I really liked your point when you were talking about like doing the whole preamble about what the album meant to you, about how the beats seem simple but are actually doing a lot, because I think that's a key to why Pierre works so well as a producer, because the beats feel simplistic but they're addictive, and then there's so many layers to them. Like all the best Pierre songs have intro or fully formed intro, outro, and vocally layered. Like one of my very favorite Pierre songs isn't even a Carti song, it's Marie Curie, and the layer of fucking vocals on that, like he is not a traditionally good vocalist, so he compensates for it by just drowning it in mixing, drowning it in reverb, and just making every single line on that like he delivers my band's on me, don't, like I'm not going to do it, but like he just like comes up with different ways to have that line delivered each time. And I think that's why he and Carti are such good fits together, because Carti is such an interesting vocalist and Pierre comes up with different ways to have those lines come across in the songs. Like every single bar is like, something for him to play with as a producer.
To me, it's
and the ad-libs.
To me, it's like where, yeah, exactly. To me, it's like where Carti is utilizing like his ad libs to throw in small little tinges of variation. It's like Pierre vice versa is like on the beats. He always throws in these little tings of like melody that like only show up like on very small, minute, quick occasions, but they're adding to this overall sound. But you could miss them really quickly, and they're only like disparately showing up. So they're both kind of like, it's kind of funny. It's like they're both doing the same thing. It's just that what Carti's doing with his vocals, Pierre's doing with his beats. And that's like all throughout this album.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. Why, Pat? I remember. Now this is a long time ago, so I might be misremembering this, but when the album first came out, and back in the Discord, the one that I remember you talking about a lot was "Lean for Real."
Yeah, that is just such an addictive hook. And when the time this came out, actually, I went to a wedding, and I kept asking for them, like the wedding band, to play "Lean for Real," and there was a Guided by Voices song. I forget. I kept that. They did not play either of these songs. Unless I kept asking them to play it. I'm assuming it was "I Am a Scientist," because I'm like, how do you not know I Am a Scientist? And they're like, shut the fuck up, loser. But yeah, so yeah, "Lean for Real." I think that is another triumph of Carti as a hook writer. But although I think that given who he's on the track with, he holds his own. Again, Wyatt, like you were saying, like he got so much shit for not being a rapper, but there are so many tracks on here where he's actually rapping. And I think this is probably the first one you can really say that, like, if you break it apart, like there's bars here. Like not, I mean, R.I.P. I don't want to go too hard into it. He is rapping on that one. I don't want to go too hard into it. Given, but "Lean for Real," like he's on there with a really like skilled, serious rapper, and I think he had something to prove on that. But the hook is what really hooked me, and the way Skepta's verse is placed, the way his voice sounds on that, just. I mean, "Long Time" is the first classic on it, but "Lean for Real" is the one that I really kept repeating, because I think that at the time this came out, I was more of a Skepta fan than a Carti fan, and
just like the way it comes on too, with like the like maniacal like chuckling in the background, like, and it comes in, and like the beat is already So
The cricket noises.
yeah, and it's kind of like
That's what.
it has like
what
a fuzz to it. It evokes like a shoegaze type sound to me. This is when it comes on. Just that first part.
Well, it's another one of those things about this. Like again, like I think this is one of the things that we all beat to death, and throughout the discussions on all the Carti things is how good he is at transitioning between songs, and that's something that even on the bootleg projects, like all of his music flows so well together. And Whole Lotta Red, I think, is the culmination of this. But I think you really see it come in full flower here. Like on the mixtape, there are certain tracks, again, like when we were discussing, I couldn't tell Kelly K and Flex from each other because they flow together so well. And, Location and Magnolia, two towering songs that go together so well. But I think here is where you can hear him putting it together in real time, essentially. And once you get to like the leaks, you can see that it's not really in real time. And that's a testament to him as a curator that it feels like it's in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And Pierre as well. Like, I think that one of the things I was thinking about, great sentence. I think that this album makes a real argument that if you put aside the whole quote unquote bars son aspect of rapping, and then when you unpack it, a lot of these rappers I'm going to discuss weren't ever bars rappers. This puts Carti in the class of like Carti and Pierre in the class of like Pete and CL and Premier and Guru and all these duos of like just completely simpatico rapper producer duos, doesn't it?
I like that thesis a lot. Damn, talk about ruffling some feathers if you ever brought that up with like a certain demographic. You know what I mean?
But was CL
the traditionalists would not like that, but CL Smooth was not anything special. Like on the like he was good.
And the joke is that Group Home was never like Lil Dak was not lyrical. Like Premier did and the Group Home record is super like all those like 90s producer like that was the whole thing about it was that the producer was Premier elevated these people. Like Group Home, the whole thing about it was that aside from Guru, Gangstar was one thing, but CL Smooth was not lyrical. A lot of these 90s rapper producer duos, they get a lot of nostalgia, rose-tinted lenses credit for stuff, just having bars just based upon the era they were in. And they were all in the same template, 3 minutes, 3 verses. But how great were all these 3 verses? If you think about it, like Carti invented genres, changed genres, like shifted templates, shifted expectations, changed the way a lot of people thought about absorbing, changed the way they absorbed music in general. Mm-hmm. And Pierre got a whole career off of this too in a way a lot of those producers didn't.
Yeah. And Pierre, we talk about just from a rapper perspective, but Pierre has a real knack for songwriting and hook writing and things that are sticky and memorable. I mean, you talk about a song like For You off of his T-Lop 5. He has there's such a warmth and an accessibility to that song, and also what he's doing on it isn't anything like special lyrically, but the songwriting is super strong, and he talks about just there's little sentences here and there, little lines here and there that will always stick with me. Like when it comes on, I'm gonna know the vast majority of the words in the song. So in addition to him making that beat and it being a beautiful beat and a beautiful melody, he also has a unique ability to ride something like that perfectly. And I think it's because he, produces. So he has a inherent knowledge of what sounds good and over, said production style. So even when he comes on this album and he talks about on Right Now, which I love that song. I know some people might point to it as a weak link here and there. I love the verse. It's so goofy. It's like,
Pierre.
I mean, the Bill Gates line, all my bills paid, is so funny. It's so fucking funny. Yeah. And I love the whole breakdown is perfect because you just have Carti with a lot of Carti doing the right now, right now, and then Pierre just comes in Back to the Future, did it all on computer, it's just it's silly, but it's so beautiful.
I love Pierre as a vocalist. I see no reason you can't include Pierre in the same discussion as Pete Rock or even fucking Ye. I really don't. Like, I mean, he doesn't have quite the body of work, but close enough. Like, as a vocalist, he understands his limitations. He works within them. I think he has the same kind of goofy charisma. He has the same positives too, in that as a producer, he knows what he sounds good over. I think he gets entirely too much undeserved shit. I really do, as a vocalist.
Unlike the previous ones we mentioned, because of the era they came out when, those producers who tried to rap are trying to be like Bar's son people, when it's like, as producers, what they could be focusing on, and what Pierre seems to focus on a lot, is that he knows melody. So he's utilizing that, because we appreciate melody a lot more now versus Bar's son. So he's able to harness what he knows from his area of expertise and then apply it to his vocals, and that helps elevate him to that, to like bring out the best of him.
Yeah, and I think vocal mix, and just in general vocal mixing too, like, and just how to play with studio space as well, which I think the other people we mentioned know how to do, but they were still focused on that legacy media mindset of, all right, 3 verses, a chorus, intro and an outro, fit the template. Yeah. Like, and only eventually did, like, at least one of those people kind of learn to play with it and think they were fucking changing the paradigm, whereas Pete Rock is still doing that shit. Like, Pete Rock needs to stop doing a lot of stuff, but Twitter, for example. But
yeah, I mean, I think like I think this whole discussion has really, not that I wasn't aware of it, but kind of like reopened my eyes to be like, yeah, I mean, Pierre isn't any different than any of these like, great all-time great producers who also have made all-time great music as a result of their production and rapping.
He's played Is it dumb to say that he might, like, yeah, he's like in that upper echelon. To me, at this point, he's in that upper echelon of like notable producers of like a decade or an era, where it's like,
I don't think, him and
with Rage alone as an
him
existence.
and Metro, Metro was like a couple years before him, he broke out, but only barely. And like, I think Metro and Pierre have the 2010s, and then, the Pierre especially, Metro from a popularity standpoint in the 2020s, both of them have been relevant for 10 years, for almost 10 years.
And I would say that Pierre probably deserves more credit because he puts himself out there with the T-Lop series, whereas Metro does Rolodex albums.
Right. Metro is very comfortable working with a large group of, like, a large subset of artists, but he doesn't, like, actually rap on his shit.
Yeah, personal aspect to Pierre working with like Nudie, and even like Pierre will also do the thing that a lot of producers do, like he'll work with like that whole thing where it's like, I'm going to work with like regional rappers, let's say more limited rappers like Jelly and like
his Sauce House label guys. He's got his that he's trying to beef up.
It's like Chavo, right?
It's Jelly, Chavo, Fraser Trill literally just had an album drop just today. Shark.
And he's given them Shark. He's given them hits too, because like Drunk and Nasty had Shark on it, and Shark has a prominent feature on it, and that song was a hit. Like that was all over TikTok, and like that was like one of his biggest songs. So might be his biggest song. I don't know what I don't look at the charts, but I imagine that is at least one of his biggest songs. So. I mean, Pierre has really done a lot to big up like his, like his stable of artists. So,
and one of the things about this album is that it marries, like, we have Pierre all over it, but you also have Travis, you have Nicki, you have like, this is probably the most front loaded with this is the most mainstream Carti album in terms of.
It's like I said earlier, this was supposed to be his victory lap album. So I kind of see the features as like an extension of that, where he was like, I've made it now. Here's all these people that like, let's get the people on. Let's get all my influence. Let's get Chief Keef and Young Thug, because I have those connections now, and I love Chief Keef and I love Young Thug. I mean, obviously, let's get my, buddies in there too.
We might. I mean, if we're just going to talk about like you're bringing up mileage. It's on the table right there.
Yeah, I didn't. Skip out of like, I hate to do the whole like, I mean, I find the whole Fantano like just go through it track by track, anathema anyway. So yeah, mileage. I didn't really realize how thought breaker that song is. That is turbo era Keith, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's so beautiful. It's easily one of the best songs on the album. I mean, it's incredible. And that's
It's
actually
just
that's a high bar, but to me it's like a lock for like a top 5 song on here. Like that's an incredible song. The way that Keith comes in, like I love the just everything that he does on it, rides the beat so perfectly.
it's
And once again,
tropical, right? Da.
you guys know me, like, a beat that rides out. So now we have the, like, the little melody and that rides out and everything. I mean, there's not much that I could say wrong about it. I have a funny anecdote of a friend of mine. I was on, like, 2019. I was doing a lot of road trips for, covering, college football my senior year. And, yeah, I played Dial It because it was, like, just an easy thing to throw on. And if to think about it, I knew it wouldn't, like, alienate people in the car. And I remember him being like, "What is he saying about her? What is her? What about her pussy? Like, what is he saying?" And like, he's got mileage, but he doesn't care. It's not problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the few lines about women on this album that is not problematic.
Yeah, it's genuine. It's legitimately like a actually nice song.
we could get to see this. Well, that goes into what used to be my crackpot conspiracy that this was a concept album. Was that I was like taking note that it's like first off, compared to the mixtape that came out at the time, this is like filled with a lot of relationship songs and songs about girls and like love songs.
I mean,
like,
fell in love. I mean, right
yeah,
there.
oh yeah. But that was like my thing was that I actually, back when I was doing my crackpot stuff, it was like I was noting that it was like, okay, all the respectful and like nice songs about women are on the tail end, and all the ones about just like having sex with women is on the front end. So I was like trying to make this thing where it's like, oh yeah, the concept is that like Carti gets into his bag, he's gotten famous, but he's trying to find love with someone that he actually like it has like a connection with, and like after fell in love he realizes that it's not that him just getting all these Malibu Barbie girls isn't really doing it for him, so he gets with an actual girl where he doesn't care about like her like because
previous life or whatever,
whatever,
sure.
or anything. Like he doesn't care. He finds a girl that he likes, and he doesn't.
So what happens?
Respect for her.
So what happens when it gets to the end? He's on the top of the building. There's no girl with him on the top of the building. That's
no,
it?
the ending. The idea. I think top is just him being like
it was a joke. I'm trying to poke holes in your
it's
crackpot
not a very
theory.
good crackpot theory. Like I said, I don't subscribe to it anymore. I think it was just me being insane at the time with how in love I was with the album. But I do think it says something that there is some weirdly, as much as there is R.I.P. with like problematic lines about women still on quite a few of these songs, especially R.I.P. Compared to where he would be at A Whole Lot of Red, he has actually got some very I won't call him progressive, but nice sentiment type perspective and songs on a couple views on relationships on this album that I think are really interesting. It's like this song with Mileage, what's the one I'm thinking of? Home, where he's just admitting that he lets his girl go out and have like it's kind of like a pimp illusion, but it's also not, because at the end of the day she doesn't come home to him, but he's like talking about how his girl gets money for him by having like pimping herself out and having sex with like other men.
Yeah, KOD,
he doesn't
right?
mind.
Yeah,
KOD. It's like he doesn't mind. Although then in the end she doesn't come back home, and it's clear that the relationship is like very this is clearly distant and removed from each other. There's actually no relationship there. And then of course Fell in Love, which I think is one of the most heady conceptual songs on the entire project. I fucking love that song.
It's a great song. Much. The way they both do it,
it's like a song.
I can see why you think Fell in Love is like the concept. Like I can see why you get like concept album out of this, because Fell in Love is right in the middle.
it's right in the middle, and it's a song about him being, because at first I thought it was, like so many people when it first came out, you're just thinking like, oh, he's just saying, I fell in love, and that's okay because we're in love. And I remember people were making fun of those lines and being like, oh yeah, what does that mean? What the fuck are you talking about? You're just saying things. But it's like, no, he's talking about how he's in love with love, not this girl he's with, and that their relationship is literally just about like built on really just false it's just sexual, and that's it. There's like no actual the love he's only in love with the idea of being in love. It's got nothing to stand on, and that like it's really shallow, and he's probably not in a relationship he's gonna like it all, and then it all breaks down. And that at the time I was making that with that being a follow-up to KOD, where his girl's admitting that she's with other guys, and like he's not gonna. There's illusions that she's not really into him. It's those types of things. But like with Fell in Love, it's like no, there's like a lot of conceptual weight here that I feel like got passed over, just because of those preconceived notions about Carti and that he wasn't saying anything. Also, that beat's just killer. That's like a low key, like almost like a friend zone beat with that
amazing beat. Very, very, very cloudy with the way the sample cuts in and out too.
That vocal chops, like that's total like friend zone almost.
Love that. I was gonna say back on that on a similar front. Love Hurts has an incredible bass line.
That was probably outside of Flatbed Freestyle the most controversial song. In terms of like beat or performance, because like I remember people were like, "This is a nothing song."
What about that is controversial? Y'all don't like hooks.
I remember
you don't like.
No, they didn't like. They thought. I remember people didn't like it because they were like, "It's literally just a bass line and a trap hi hat, and that's it." People were hating the beat a lot, and they were
I will say, at the time, I was still in my anti-Travis lane, so it did break the flow for me between Old Money and Shuda, which I love both those songs, and I was like, I like this. It's not it doesn't ruin anything for me, but it's my least favorite song so far.
Shawty wanna rock star.
Again, I'm an idiot. In retrospect, I'm like, I'm an idiot. This is fucking wonderful.
And again, the conceptual weight of these songs, because it's like this is a whole song about him being like, yeah, these girls like they don't want to know the real me. They want like a guy who's just like all about his money and.
You are really pushing the crackpot theory. Like I'm
getting back.
I was going to say how much
this is like a Jehovah's Witness for the crackpot theory. Like let's ease up a little bit, Wyatt.
I'm sorry. I'm getting back into it because I'm hyping myself up again.
Gosh.
But
I'm not saying that conceptually on here and there I don't agree with you on certain songs, but as a complete package, I strongly disagree with you.
No, but as a song,
the podcast position is not. We do not. As the Living Off Borrowed Time podcast does not endorse our guest theory on this show.
Right. I'm not. But my thing is, I'm not talking about like the conceptuals of the whole album. I guess what I'm trying to hammer home is that there used to be this preconceived notion that Carti ain't saying shit, and that in actuality he is saying a lot, and that there is actual concepts to these songs. There's a lot of structure and concept of these songs. He wasn't just saying shit. You know what I mean?
I agree with
he had plenty of concepts in his songs.
I agree. I would also just like to say though that I am anti-concept album as just in general.
So yeah, again, this isn't a concept album. I'm just saying in the songs.
So I just want to make it clear that holistically for a whole record, I do kind of. You said just a minute ago that the preconceived notion was Carti wasn't saying shit. 100% that was that notion. And then you were also talking about how what do you call it? But no, there are actual concepts of these songs or whatever. In my view, like to me that doesn't matter. Like the concepts don't matter to a song. He would be quote unquote saying shit regardless of if there was a concept or a narrative or a general idea that be conveyed easily, track by track. So that's
sure.
kind of,
and I would agree with you that you don't need that for songs. I could listen, it's like I could listen to a rapper rap about anything, and especially even if it's the same thing over and over again, if as long as you're doing it in a cool way that still stand out, not totally repetitive and everything like that. Like, that's the entire genesis of like weed rap. Like if it's or something like that.
You're just referring to it. My interpretation is you're referring to it as even in the most traditionalist sense, like Carti. I mean, this is my opinion now. It's bleeding into, but even in the most traditional sense of the rapping term, I think Carti's an incredible rapper.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's kind of my that's.
So
my
I think
view.
MC versus vocalist sort of idea, where I think that Wyatt has kind of taken the MC as like argument that. He's trying to say, like, he is saying something, whereas Caleb's taking the vocalist argument, where it's like it doesn't matter, the vocalist.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, Patrick just distilled our whole last 5 minutes into one sentence. That's
yeah, but it is kind of because I would say something like Leanfield track, like Leanfield doesn't have a concept; it's just him rapping, but it's fucking amazing. It's just all about the melody and everything. And I just think that Carti should get some credit that he does have concept songs. He does deliver those. It's just like I feel like at least during this time frame, he wasn't giving. He was kind of getting short shrifted on that. I do think with Love Hurts, to go back to it, it's very interesting to think that at one point this was considered like. So again, like what we're talking about, that song was considered so abrasive and out there because of how minimal it was. And it seems so.
You listen to the underground today, like it sounds like boom bap,
Yeah. It's so funny. It reminds me of when Diction was. Oh, you guys had Diction on for the Mad Villainy episode. And he was talking for the MS
Doom episode. Yeah.
And he was talking about how Mad Villainy at the time was seen as so experimental because it's like he didn't have any choruses or anything like that. And it's like now that's so like really this Mad Villainy was considered like it's abstract and it's still kind of forward. It's still certainly forward thinking in some ways, but it's like it's not totally mentally like bucking the trends as we think of now. And this is kind of, and so I kind of get that same feeling a little bit from this, where it's like, oh yeah. Well, it's like that this was so weird and controversial and like spatial, and it's like it is, but it's not like unheard of now.
Well, it's like Caleb said, like this kind of sounds like Illmatic now. It's like actually, I think more accurately, like Mad Villain kind of sounds like Illmatic. Like this kind of sounds like Dr. Octagon almost, where it's like traditional, progressive, maybe, like because it kind of took a template and ran with it, like kind of took a template and did something progressive with it. And it might have sounded a little weird at the time and people thought it was a little off kilter, but it was so good at what it did that people were able to just adjust to it because so well done. I don't know. Like, do you understand?
I think that's fair. And so I know we talking about songs with features, but
okay, so can we talk about the Nicki feature, I guess? Because I feel like that was another thing that people had, like...
people definitely bristled at the Nicki feature. It's funny because not many Nicki Minaj songs in the late 2010s are songs that I actively enjoy. Just not for me. I know I'm putting myself out there for a certain stan group, but they wouldn't listen to this anyway. I mean, it's a bunch of dudes in a podcast. No, negative 10. Yeah, they're not really listening to this, and nor should they. But...
Can I say
that? I can listen to this podcast actually because we could deal with like that kind of like uptick in our traffic.
That's true. So. That's true. We could stand for a couple more listeners. I think she's great on it, and I like how it's stupid, but I love how she does the whole watch Apple FaceTime thing, like that whole sequence
like, I feel like she actually does like a cart. Like Nicki
she does an impression, but it's a good impression.
No, let's see if you go back to, and we talked about this in our Baby Pictures episode way back when, she is really, really skilled at being a mimic. And like, I think that was something that was a bigger novelty with her because, oh my God, woman's doing it. Like, yeah, because it's something Game does, and everybody's like, oh, you're corny as shit. But when a girl does it, it's
I kind of like it. I kind of like it that she does the Carti flow because
no, I was saying I like it. I think it's cool. Like she does it in a way that's clever on the song because she also does it in the midst of other stuff she does that's also cool. Like I think her verse is just like it's novelty, but it's like fun. Like sometimes I have to be she is so hit. Like she takes big swings all the time, and a lot of times they don't work for me. But this one worked. So
yeah, I like it because it makes me feel like. It lets me, in a weird way, lets me know that, like, oh, she's involved in this song. She wasn't just, like, given, like, for a name like Nicki Minaj at this time, it's like, it wasn't like she was just like, oh, here's your verse. I sent it over to you through the internet. Here you go. It's like she clearly was either in the booth with Carti or, like, at least had preconceived notions about the song and who Carti was and liked his music and was like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and try to hang with Carti in his realm. And she does it really well. It's really good. As someone who doesn't listen to Nicki at all, like I think I've only heard her on guest verses occasionally, and like obviously on the radio sometimes. Back in the day, I feel like this was like the last. As mean as it is to say, I feel like this is the last positive thing I can think of in terms of Nicki involvement.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think the last thing I even remember from her was that she got in the news because her cousin's friend from Barbados said that the COVID vaccine would shrink your balls.
That did happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the big brain.
Think of.
Like I think this is right around the
not a W.
Who was it that she was diss rapping with before Carti? Was
any other woman who
tried? Yeah, but there was someone specific. I can't remember who had like the Sheether thing. Who the fuck was that?
Was it Megan?
No, it wasn't Megan. It was before that. It's like someone else, but I fucking forget. But the point is that it's like this was like right around that start of Nicki beefing with women rappers and being like,
no, that's what literally like that has literally always been her gimmick since like she started. So that doesn't really narrow it down. Wait, was it whoever she was? Remy? She said something.
Oh yeah, Remy. No, it was Remy Ma. This was like I think right around the time that she was like, but it was pissing off like actual like general audiences that she was like everyone was recognizing. I think this was that point where people were recognizing that it's like Nicki. Oh wait a minute, Nicki's kind of a shitty person for like getting women rappers like.
I mean, people were saying that she feels threatened, yada yada yada, which is
then referenced in the lines of the song, like that's what like the pretend Barbies type stuff. I very distinctly remember this was right around that time with the Remy Ma beef.
I don't think any of that stuff is interesting at all, so I just like we can skip over that.
We can skip over that.
We don't want to bog down the Lit podcast with annoying ass.
I just want to hammer home that this was like a highlight for Nicki before a fall, a deeper fall. But this was a bright spot for her. She did really well on this track. I really do like how she implements it. Playboy.
That should underline how good the verse is, that she was in the midst of just being so tiresome, and this verse is still great. Like, that's how good this album is.
Absolutely.
Good verse out of, like, fucking Sheryl Sandberg. That girl ball.
Good beat.
Verse.
What a fucking good beat. God damn, the beat on Poke It Out.
Oh, and the little the melodies, like the melody with the like synth arpeggios that comes in, where it's like dun dun dun
on the choruses.
Dun, yeah.
Oh, God, that shit's so good. It like
incredible.
One of the things that Pierre is really good at on this album is like he really balances like the tropical stuff, which I associate with Nudie, with like more dark like tones, like R.I.P. and Notice Me, I would say, is a darker one. Like the Mileage is really good, like light one. Like there's just like he goes from like I don't know, and like that's a testament to transitions as well. I think I mentioned this on the a lot of Red Leaks one that's coming up in the series, that there's just Carti's music reminds me of like Summertime at Night. And I think that's
whereas the mixtape is like, I talk about this in my really old Dial-It review, but it's like whereas the mixtape was like it's sunny out in the tropics in the middle of summer and like you're just rolling around partying. This is like if the party carried over into the nighttime of that same summery day. Like it's still going on and you're still like buzzing from it, but now it's like at night. Like it's like you said, it's tropical and it's warm, but it's nocturnal. It's very spatial, much more minimal, a little bit more even minimalistic. It starts from like lean real with the cricket noises to me, and like from there it's like, okay, we're partying at night now.
And there are just like songs that, you know, kind of have a feel or a fit for anything. I mean, you talk about like Foreign. I mean, always soft spot for Foreign because it was the first song I played in my first ever car. So that was definitely a warm thing to look back on. But yeah, I fucking love that song. Another great beat. What was that, Pat?
Was it a foreign car?
It was not. Well, what, Honda's Japanese, right? So that counts.
Foreign car, yeah.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, not exactly. I'm sure not the same Foreign that Carti was referring to, but it is. We're gonna speed past that. Another top 5 song on here with a feature is No Time. No Time is incredible. I played that so much. I would play that even if I didn't get to listen to the full album in full. I would play that because listeners will hear on future episodes, but Monday through Sunday is one of my favorite Carti songs of all time. No Time is also in that similar bucket. Like, he and Gunna have phenomenal chemistry that is not really talked about very much. It seems obvious that he and Thug would have great chemistry, but I feel like he and Gunna actually have like even better chemistry. They flow so perfectly to the point where when I listened to No Time for the very first time, a lot of times here, it was to the point where I almost couldn't distinguish who from who initially, that very first listen, because their verses, like Gunna does the hook, and they go verse, hook, verse, hook. So it rolls into each other. Amazing song, amazing beat. Another one, like Wyatt just talked about the melody for Poke It Out. Another melody where it's just like, it's like it bounces around like in my brain, you know, all the time. And a great Don Cannon beat. Shout out to Don Cannon.
It's weirdly like almost a little bit aquatic, or like,
yeah. Well, I mean,
sleepy,
Gunna's
like
music.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm sure it's tied into that. I'm sure it's tied into that. Absolutely.
Because that was
funny.
I mean, that was the Drip or Drown, like, you know, or Drip Season era for Gunna, and they had, you know, collabs like on the next Gunna album. So yeah.
It's kind of funny that this album is kind of pulling from a lot of guests who are like at a very strong point in their careers. Like, it just so happens that they're all like this is like pretty damn, like, not to say everybody like fell off after this, of course not, but I'm just saying, like, you know, Chief Keef, like we're saying, with his like, this is like a thought breaker type deal. Young Thug is like post Jeffrey at this time. Like, he references that. We got Young Nudie on the come up. Gunna, Drip or Drown, Season era. Pierre Bourne, obviously, is right now like pretty good. Nicki Minaj before a fall off. Uzi at like a very height of his powers. Travis Scott before pre Astro World. Which is not to say Astro World's bad, but you know what I mean. And like, Skepta, like the height of his US relevancy.
Good. The album Astro World was quite good. The festival Astro World.
True. True.
I would say that this, though, is a test. I wanted to bring this up. I'm glad you mentioned it, Wyatt. Was that this is a testament to Carti as like a collaborator. Like, he's a really good curator in terms of like putting things together. But as a collaborator, I think he brings the best out of his features, and you see that here. And also when you like look at the leaks too, like the Trippy song, the Offset song, like you see this more in the Whole Lot of Red leaks. But like even these leaks, like which are like they came out in 2 waves, and they're less illuminating than the Whole Lot of Red leaks, which was more like a separate project. Like you'll hear when we go like in the future when we do that episode, that's more of its own standalone project. Whereas the leaks for this are just kind of like alternate versions, demos. There's some like songs that are their own thing, but that's more of just like a traditional bootleg for this. But you still have stuff like he does a song with Carti B that's pretty mean. He has an Offset song that's really good because he always has really good like chemistry with Migos, like going back to the Abundance era. And there's a Juice WRLD song that's pretty cool, although I think I differ with Caleb a little bit on this. I think the verbiage on the hook is a little problematic.
It's not great. What I will say is that the verbiage you're talking about, for whatever reason, is not uncommon at all amongst pop rap, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. I feel like I've heard a number. I mean, there's a Travis and Quavo song, "Modern Slavery."
I think we have the album and what track specifically we can credit for this. We're not going to unpack that one, but my point being though, like all these songs are like, pretty high end for the collaborators though. Like you were saying, Wyatt, about the Nicki song, like it felt like she was in the booth with him. She probably wasn't, but she was tapped in enough to really put in an effort. And I feel like that's how it is with him. Like if you're going to collaborate with Carti, you really feel the need to be invested. Like I feel like even he was that much of a presence that he handed in collaborators.
And with that song, I always appreciated that Carti, he knows when he needs to get the fuck out of the way. So, or he doesn't mind getting the fuck out of the way. Like I remember people used to joke, it's like, oh, he's only got like Carti says maybe a total of like his verse is probably like 8 bars and he gets out of the way and Nicki takes up like a majority, like 2/3 of the song. But I really respect that. And it's also, to me, it's an allusion to like, he did it with Fetty, and then he did it kind of like with New Choppa on the mixtape with A$AP Rocky, because that's a song where A$AP takes up 2/3 of the song. And so here you're getting a song where Nicki takes up 2/3 of the song. More sequelitis from the mixtape, like carrying over. But I always do kind of appreciate that at times Carti knows that when to come in and only say what he needs to say, and then let some, he's partial to letting his guest shine when he needs to, and he knows when to do it.
I think
feature too, like some of his most famous songs, "Earthquake" with Tyler, "City of God" recently. Yeah, like he definitely is just like a very minimal presence on those songs, but a potent one. So
that's the launch feature he had.
100%. I wish he would go over more production like that. He sounds incredible on that song. I mean, we always.
Oh yeah. I was about to mention the Solange album. Yeah. 2019 album. Yeah.
Yeah, but also on the feature tip, I mean, he and Nudie, R.I.P. Fredo, Pat mentioned off the top. One of my favorites too on here. I mean, just another like S tier beat. Pierre once again in his melody bag, and those two just have perfect chemistry, as we would see on throughout each of their careers. And Nudie just gets it. Nudie's a rapper who, like, it's so rare that I don't really enjoy what Nudie brings to a track each time he's on a song. So yeah, I mean, they just also, I know people like memed about like the notice me part, like, because he kind of he pushes the words up against each other. He pushes the letters in notice me up against each other, so it sounds like he's like rushing through it.
I used to always think he's saying, "Yeah, it's me."
I got. That like James Bond, notice me, like a little bit.
People used to say like nourish or whatever. Like,
they don't even know it's me. Like he doesn't pronunciate he doesn't hardline the T.
Right,
so it's me.
They don't even know.
He skips the T. Yeah. That's great. Gotta love the way he, like, a lot of slurring on this, and in terms of vocal inflection, he's like talking with his like tongue kind of like on the roof of his mouth. It's really neat. I love it.
I mean, if you think looking at the track list now, you have Mileage all the way through to Top. That's like such a killer end run. Like,
I know, and people hate on Middle of the Summer. I like that song a lot. I don't.
Yeah, that's another great one where it's like Carti getting the fuck out of the way, and he knows it because the feature is so good. I always do get curious whatever was up with Red Cold Hearted.
who the fuck is that
so
guy?
Good. Who is that? Yeah.
Who the fuck is that guy? Let's check out his RYM too.
Red Cold Hearted has one credit, and it's on down.
It's like fucking pulling an MF Doom again, where it's like you have this one random like low key like local
what if he's actually
female feature?
What if he's actually Kill Edward?
I did wonder. Jesus, I do. It only goes by for a second, but my theory has always been that this Red Cold Hearted was someone Carti was dating at the time.
That's exactly
because if you closely listen to the ad libs right at the start of the song, you can hear Carti talk about how he's like, "I'm gonna let my bitch sing on this song" or something like that. Where he's talking about, I got a song with my bitch.
It's a sequel to my Sing on This Shit on Flex, yeah.
And if you think about like billing it to Red Cold Hearted, like it's probably he broke up with her and he's red and is cold hearted. Get it?
Oh boy, the tinfoil hat is on right now.
I was gonna say why put his tinfoil hat on. Now I'm breaking out the lore too. This
is as deep as it gets right here.
We're rabbit hole. We're through the looking glass here, people. But
say all that, it's a really good feature, which is why I'm saying it's like, I wish she has, or at least I feel like I wish this had jumped her off more, because it seems like she's really interesting as a vocalist. Like, it's a really good performance.
Yeah, I like the.
I have an even bigger tinfoil hat for you. What if it's Carti shifting his vocals like Nas's Scarlet?
Like Lady B.
Lady B, yes. Skinny Pimp, yes.
Skinny Pimp.
I remember trying to explain to Patrick about Lady B versus Skinny Pimp, but I couldn't say the title of the album. This is on the 3-6 episode back in the day. If you remember. That was a hilarious moment where I was like, okay, Pat, so picture this. It's like Nas Scarlet, but Memphis rap. And he was like, well, what's it called? And I was like,
Well, that's like I was trying to explain the whole Lil White thing to Chops in the server, and he's like, Lil White would be a hilarious name for a white rapper. And somebody just
was like, I hate to break it to
you. So, gentlemen, we've broken down this track list quite extensively, and unless you have something else, to bring up about another song, we need to talk about the elephant in the room here. I think before we can even fathom heading out, we got to talk about Shuda.
That was how I was going to want to close it as well, to be honest with you.
Now, I pose a question to you both: is Shuda quite possibly one of the greatest songs of our time?
It'd be better if it was in the original version, actually, now that I've heard the original version with Rocket on top.
I only listened to the original version. However, I'm not going to act like the first month or so the album came out, I didn't obsessively listen to that version because I knew there wasn't, or I didn't know there was another version. This is this is a generation-defining track. I actually have a story about
I think that part of the reason people don't like Love Hurts that much is because you can just go from Old Money to Shuda. That's part of the reason that I had a problem with Love Hurts at the time. Again, as good as it is like Old Money to Shuda is the move. You could probably put Love Hurts on the back
It's funny. I think Old Money is a dope song. I think Love Hurts is way better. That's Old Money to me of the first
Old Money, I don't know. Old Money
of the first 8 tracks, it's the
Old Money knew how, whatever. That is again, that probably, if we had much more listener base, they probably mean that as me saying that's a terrible thing to fucking hear come out of my mouth. But that is such a good ass hook.
It's a great beat too.
Wow.
If we're talking
and
about
that is one other thing I want to touch on before I forget, because that sounds so good in the Slater slowed and reverb version. Because that, by the way, is how I truly came to love this. Was around the time this came out was when Slater was putting out his slowed and reverb versions, and this and his Frank Ocean versions were amazing. And I don't know if they're still on YouTube. I did pull them and then circulate them on SoulSeek, and then found them again after my hard drive crashed. Somebody else found my versions and still were circulating them. Thank you, SoulSeek user. So I do think that the slowed and reverb genre does get a lot of shit. Like undeserved shit, much like Pierre Bourne got, because I think that people think it's low effort. I think much like people think Chopped and Screwed is low effort, but I think that the version, specifically the slowed and reverb version of this, led me to appreciate a lot of the nuances of both Carti's vocal performance and Pierre's production, and I highly recommend it if you can find it.
No, you're not kidding. The version of there are some of the versions, like the version of Fell in Love is incredible. The version of Foreign is incredible. The version of No Time is incredible. Flatbed has an incredible slow and reverb version from Slater. Obviously, Long Time, it doesn't need it, but it gets it, and it's amazing.
It just gives the album a little more space. Like, I mean, the album doesn't need space, but with a little more space, you just appreciate nuances a bit more. Because this album has a ton of nuance, and so
there are you know. This is going to lead into the story I was about to reference, but there are kind of like, you know, a number of different memes or meme templates out there on social media for years where it's like, you know, doctor, you have X number of minutes to live, and it's like me plays this song or whatever. Shooter is like that type of song. I guess long time obviously fits that bill too, but Shooter is like that type of song for me where from the very first time I heard it and that crescendo and like the strings and how it ultimately builds into probably the most satisfying, you know, beat drop, so to speak, or that Carti's had in his whole career. Like,
meet me in the alley with the troops. I got red, blue shooters. I got blue. And that thing down point at you.
Though that's another one where it's just like I referenced at the top of the episode, just everything being seared into my brain. There is never going to be a time where I don't know every single word to Shooter, no matter what version you play. The one that ended up being on the album. Patrick's referenced, you know, Rocket, which was like the leaked version, the one that had the second Uzi verse as a cleanup verse, which is incredible. I mean, obviously, like I could do the whole verse. I'm not gonna do it, but like my life is like a movie minus all the acting. Like, you know, I love all that. He also says my D-bomb like a terrorist. I'm pretty sure, which like whole other just you know, whatever. But love the song. And I was driving around, I think it was last summer. Yeah, I was driving around with my brother last summer, and this album came on. I was in the mood to throw a few songs on from it, and Shooter came on. And usually when he's in the car with me, like I just play whatever fucking music I want. He doesn't really react to it. Like sometimes he'll like shit, but you know. He doesn't, you know, he's my younger brother. Your brother doesn't think shit.
But he doesn't go outside.
Right. He doesn't, he does go outside, but he doesn't like shit. But he, you know, your brother's like, he's not going to acknowledge, like, he doesn't think you're cool, whatever. But anyway, this song came on, and the minute Uzi did the, like, Now Is My Time, he also started, like, doing it and rapping it. And I didn't even knew he knew the song like that. So it was, like, a very cool moment of like, how that song kind of, to me, will transcend eras and
it's just
generations.
It's just audio cut. It's just pure camaraderie. It's just two guys who are total, like, from what I can tell, you know, just you know, looking at celebrities, but it's like two guys who seem like just complete friends, working, just coming together like in the perfect way.
At their peak too.
Their peaks.
Yeah.
And it's such a fucking. I don't want to be sound esoteric and use the word camaraderie. Camaraderie. However you say that word.
Camaraderie.
But it's like fuck out. It's camaraderie, and thank you. But it's like that. But it just exudes that. It's like this is just a song. It's a song about friendship and them just rolling around. Or at least, especially Uzi's verse, where he's like, "Think I've met my bestie, link up with my bestie." Like he's talking about Carti and like them just rolling around, hanging out. Like it's just such fucking fun. And it's like, then it's been, in recent times, it's been just, it's just been stamped with that because of the whole Rolling Loud set where they came back together after whatever that beef was. But it's like that Rolling Loud set where Uzi comes out after the drop and they're just like hugging each other and like just going nuts with the crowd. Like that to me is like the peak essence of that song, brought to life.
They've always been kindred spirits artistically, and that song is the perfect example of what a collab album from them could sound like. We'll never get it obviously, but what it could sound like in theory, and together, I mean, it's just like it's like the handshake emoji, like that's what it is. So I don't have much more to say other than I'm gonna love that song until I don't exist. So yeah.
I will say I'll be the one despairing opinion that I did listen to Rocket and I don't prefer it to what we got on the album, only because I think it's such a propulsive song that like you get the build up with Uzi and then smash cut into Carti's verse with the explosion, with like the drop. And then like you get a chorus, a mini verse, and then right back into the chorus, and then it gets out.
But Rocket, like the Uzi verse is staple to the is after the chorus, the chorus.
It's not
after
like
the drop. It kind of slows it down for me a little bit when you include Uzi's verse into it. Like the melody has to slow back down a little bit.
But to me, there's like so you have Uzi verse, drop, Carti verse, hook, and then into the Uzi verse, the cleanup. But the way that it happens, and then obviously the Carti hook at the end, but the way that it happens, I actually feels like it builds more momentum in the second half. Like you think you're down off the high, and then it like ratchets it up again, and then goes right back to like one more hook, and you ride out. I love how it does that personally.
Yeah, and it's certainly not bad. I don't dislike it at all. There's just something for me where it's like when I feel like it was for me personally, I feel like it was the right choice to cut it just for like I said, the propulsiveness of everything. Like it just, once you get into that drop, it just goes and it doesn't calm down there. And then the next thing you know, it's over and done with.
And I think there's honestly something to that is there's really like, I mean, listening to the leaks, they're all good. Like the thing about it is I always go back to this and no one else knows or cares what I'm talking about when I say Carti's like Pollard. He has so many fucking like B-sides and whatever. They're all good. Like they're all good. He has like shadow albums on shadow albums, but like for the previous era and the next era, they have like he has ones that could stand alone as their own albums, and you could make choices that would make for different albums. But for this period, I wouldn't swap anything out really, except for maybe that one song. That's it, and that's like. That's up to taste. Other than that, and even you would say that you wouldn't swap that one out. That's the only song. Other than that, this is stitched perfectly together. It's sequenced perfectly. The guests are perfectly chosen. Like I might want a second Uzi song on here. I might want Offset on here. I might want Cardi B on here. Like, but that's like those are selfish choices. I really think this is pretty much perfectly put together. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. This is a generation defining album. This is his sound synthesized and just utilized perfectly. Him and Pierre at the peak of their powers.
It reverberated in the mainstream. It reverberated in the underground. It changed how a lot of people listened to and approached rap music. And I think it pushed boundaries for what rap and especially rap on a sonic level could be, which Carti has been doing pretty much for the majority of his career, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that it's a peak for its time frame. Yeah, and like you guys said, the influences that it really just completely changed the dynamics of where the rap game was going. Like we were discussing, like to me, this pretty much was like the moment the whole mumble rap discussion like died. Before it was contentious. This was like the moment. This album to me like exemplified like, yeah, we're done talking about that. We're just in the era now where this is the accepted era. You can't fight it anymore. Like this is the new wave. get with it or get out. And it also is it's kind of funny, but in retrospect, outside of the leaks, if you listen to them, this is also marks like a last in terms of a project. This is like the last era for a certain sound for Carti, because after this he completely rewrites his entire script for a Whole Lotta Red, and also kind of stops working with Pierre like as closely as he does. Like he's already kind of creeping in with newer producers like Art Dealer and stuff. Like this is for them kind of a victory lap for them as a producer as like a duo, at least as it stands for right now. So it really is just a moment in time. It's so good.
Yeah, he's a restless artist. Like that's one thing you could say about him. He really doesn't stick with anything too long. Mm-hmm. Like In Abundance was the cloud rap sound, and then you can take the self-titled mixtape as like the cloud rap sound transitioning into this, which was cloud rap and Plug and Rage, like sort of synthesizing. And then Whole Lotta Red was its own thing that birthed what we have now. And then where's he going from here? Who's to say?
Mm-hmm.
No, couldn't have said any better than you guys. As I always do in these episodes, just thank everybody for listening. Wyatt, thank you for helping to assemble this 3-part saga, and happy 5 years to Die Lit, one of my favorite albums ever, and one of our favorite artists here on the podcast. And we will see you next week with more Playboi Carti. Peace.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.